Tulsi Gabbard is back in the news, ladies and gentlemen, for a different reason this time. It appears that she is friendly with Donald Trump, and it's starting to stir some questions. If you haven't had a chance to do so, make sure you answer that poll question. Before we get into what happened this week with Tulsi Gabbard and this Trump situation, I want to take you back to a moment when Tulsi Gabbard was actually still running through the Democratic Party in the primary for 2020, because I want to show you that Tulsi has actually met with Donald Trump before. She actually met with him when she was still a Democrat. Here's that reminder.
Well, one of the first people, and definitely one of the first Democrats Donald Trump met with after his election was Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. The two met on November 21st to talk over, among other things, U.S.-Syria policy. At that point, by the way, Trump had chosen only the White House Chief of Staff and his Attorney General. Interesting. Now, Representative Gabbard has sponsored a bill she says will bar the United States from supplying weapons to ISIS or other terror groups. And she joins us now on set. Congresswoman, thanks a lot.
So you guys hear this? Tulsi Gabbard met with Donald Trump in 2017. That's when she was still a part of the Democratic Party. We're following a timeline here. Walk with me. Walk with me.
Coming on.
Thank you very much, Secretary.
So I was just really struck by that. You were one of the very first people he met with. Now, you issued a press release, and I'm sure some of you're a liberal Democrat, I think it's fair to say. Some of your constituents must have been confused, and you issued this statement. You said, I felt it was important to take the opportunity to meet with the president-elect now before the drumbeats of war that neocons have been beating drag us into an escalation of the war to overthrow the Syrian government.
That's right.
What did you mean by that, I guess, beyond what you said? And do you believe that the president-elect agrees with your views on this?
I have long been outspoken about the devastating problems with our U.S. policy, generally on interventionist wars, and very specifically on the need to end our counterproductive regime change war to overthrow the Syrian government. Hundreds of thousands of people have lost their lives, millions of refugees, and the counterproductive result of this has been that these groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups who we proclaim to be our enemy have ended up growing stronger. So understanding that we have a new commander-in-chief coming in, president-elect coming into office very soon, I took the opportunity to be able to get across this message to him. As a veteran, knowing and seeing firsthand the cost of war, I felt it was critical to do my part to try to help influence this new administration and extend this call to action to them to end this counterproductive war that has caused so much devastation.
So what was it?
Pause. Okay, so it is this rhetoric from Tulsi Gabbard that made many believe that she was anti-war. And I kept telling people, well, Tulsi is not anti-war. She is against some of the regime change wars, right? So she was against what was happening in Syria. And she got a lot of criticism for that. But you see now today, you see these tweets from her. We need to support Israel. We need to give them weapons, and we need to stop, Hamas. And you see that other side of her that shows that she is for war. She's just against some of the regime change wars. So I've been saying that about Tulsi for the longest time. I remember I said that on Rising one time, and a number of people were like, how dare you say that about Tulsi? She is anti-war. Fast forward to October 7th. And here comes Tulsi making her own statement, telling people to give Israel whatever they need, to give them the weapons that they need to take out Hamas. So there you go. But I wanted to show you this because I want to walk through a timeline here to show you back when that Tulsi Gabbard had met with Donald Trump before. There are a number of people on social media that are saying, oh, my God, Tulsi has completely turned, right wing. Well, yeah, I knew she was going that way. It was pretty obvious. But people need to remember she had already met with him and spoke with him before. And that was when she was a Democrat. Flashback from the past. And there's another one. I want to remind you about the Trump impeachment vote. Some people may have forgotten about this. It's been quite a minute. But remember when the House was voting for Donald Trump to be impeached? Do you remember how Tulsi voted? Here's a reminder.
So after doing my due diligence and reviewing the 658-page impeachment report, I came to the conclusion that I could not in good conscience vote either yes or no. I am standing in the center.
The yeas are 230, the nays are 197, present is 1.
I could not in good conscience vote against impeachment because I believe President Trump is guilty of wrongdoing. I also could not in good conscience vote for impeachment because removal of a sitting president must not be the culmination of a partisan process.
Pause here. This was part of Tulsi Gabbard's career in the Democratic Party, where Tulsi was starting to lose more support from the DNC and the Democratic Party altogether. Now, it started in 2016 when she decided to endorse Bernie Sanders and not Hillary Clinton. She was no longer the DNC darling. Like, they considered her to be the next big thing, right? So she betrayed them, they felt like. And then you fast forward to her meeting with Donald Trump. There was criticism there. And then you fast forward to the Trump impeachment vote, and she chose to vote present. And what was really interesting about that is that you heard her say it herself, is that she admitted that Donald Trump was guilty of what he did. But it wasn't enough for her to vote in favor of the impeachment. So the question that I have for people, when people say Tulsi Gabbard completely changed, did she completely change? Or is it that we may not have been paying attention? She's always kind of moved her own way and marched to her own beat, if you think about it. And here's another more recent example. I want you to hear what she's saying now. Remember, she announced that she was leaving the Democratic Party and she considered herself to be an independent. She announced this on Joe Rogan's podcast. Yes? Okay. I want you to hear what she said here. This is her being against the Houthis. The Biden-Harris administration is undermining our national security, placing us in a dangerous position. They removed the Houthi terrorist designation in 2020, funneled billions of money to Iran, who's funding proxy groups like the Houthis, and let thousands daily cross our border unvetted, including terrorists. They are dangerously short-sighted. Listen to her here on Fox News. Oh, and we cannot forget as well, once Tulsi Gabbard, remember, she was leaving the Democratic Party, then she also made her way towards Fox News. So I always consider Tulsi Gabbard to be someone who's sort of an opportunist. I'm just keeping it real. She kind of moves and shifts where it fits her best at that point in time. What I'm saying is, I don't think that she is someone that you can count on to be loyal. Let's get into this.
My greatest concern, both as a soldier who serves in the Army Reserve, a veteran for over 20 years and multiple deployments to different war zones, is how short-sighted, incompetent, and lack of caring that the Biden-Harris administration has for our own national security and the American people. What they are doing here now appears to be not well thought out at all, or considering what the ramifications of this will be and how it serves our national security interests, just like they didn't think through what the ramifications would be of taking the Houthis off of the terrorist list a few years ago, just like they didn't consider the ramifications of giving Iran over $6 billion, much of which is going not to the well-being and humanitarian interests of the Iranian people, as they were promised, but to fund these terrorist groups like the Houthis to do exactly what they are doing, threatening global commerce and peace.
The Houthis are trying to prevent more bloodshed of Palestinian people. But Tulsi said, fuck them kids.
We have a Secretary of Defense who was hospitalized for 5 days, and the White House, leaders in the Pentagon, the National Security Council, the president himself had no idea. It's hard to convey this frustration, both as an American, but also as a soldier. How is this even possible, coming from our leaders in the Pentagon and the President of the United States, who already turned off the lights for the night, even as our military is taking action overseas. So we should all be very concerned right now about the consequences of such a short-sighted administration who undermines our national security at every turn in the decisions that they are making overseas, but also in the decisions that they're making here at home. And you talked a little bit about this before. Tens of thousands or thousands and tens of thousands of people are streaming across our borders into our country with no vetting whatsoever. And we know that that includes people who are terrorists who seek to do harm to the American people right here at home.
Tulsi, I want to read a quote from Richard Goldberg. He's a former NSC official under Trump, saying that the key for military action in Yemen is to respond in a way that doesn't lead to a never-ending tit-for-tat. That's been the administration's approach in Syria and in Iraq, and it has failed. Now, Tulsi, that does seem to be the most frightening aspect of what's happened tonight. 3 months ago, when Israel was so brutally attacked and innocents killed and raped and maimed, it was at that point that our...
Notice they always bring up the sexual assault piece when they're talking about what happened on October 7th. Notice they always bring that up, but they don't dare utter the sexual assault that has happened to Palestinian women and children, which the UN has actually reported.
Commander-in-Chief had to make it very clear that any attack or escalation of this is going to be met with severe and immediate military response, and consulting with Congress at the time. That was not done. There was kind of comments here and there. John Kirby came out a lot. But again, this administration seems much more interested in demonizing Donald Trump and pursuing him legally than it does in reassuring the American public and having a clear and concise, frankly, foreign policy.
Yes, but we also have to remember that Tulsi Gabbard endorsed Joe Biden. See, you know, it's interesting when you take a look back at things. We have to remember 2020, once Tulsi Gabbard had dropped out of the race, we have to remember, who did she decide to endorse, Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden? She endorsed Joe Biden. This is the person that you wanted in the White House, Tulsi. So you got what you asked for.
You're exactly right, Laura. You know, there's no doubt in my mind that the actions that are being taken right now will not increase our national security or the safety and well-being of our troops who are deployed overseas right now, nor will it have the consequence of stopping these attacks by the Houthis. In fact, the opposite is true, just as they stated, and we don't only have to trust their words, we look at their actions. It will increase and escalate their attacks on our interests and on our troops who are in the region, many of whom are very, very soft targets in those surrounding countries. So the administration hasn't done the basic analysis to say, hey, do our troops need to be in these areas? Do we need to be exposing them to this risk and harm? Conduct that analysis, that cost risk analysis, to decide where our interests, how are we protecting them, and stop trying to undermine our own democracy, as you pointed out, right here at home, as they are willing to pull out all stops just to protect their own power.
So I always felt like when she moved over to Fox News that she was auditioning for another political position. And then there's this news that came through. Donald Trump has criticized NATO. Now, look, I think we should ban NATO. I think NATO needs to be removed. Just my take. You don't have to agree with me. But Tulsi Gabbard was actually questioned about that. Now, that was recently, and this is what started me to think, okay, maybe I see the track that she is trying to take here.
You've seen this tactic before when the Biden administration and Hillary Clinton and all these warmongers start fear-mongering. It's because they're trying to distract the American people away from what's actually happening. And when you look at what Trump is doing, he's talking about very real issues that the American people care about. He's talking about how our open borders, Biden's open borders, are destroying our country. He's talking about the rising inflation. He's talking about rampant crime in our streets. And now with NATO, he is forcing the American people and NATO members to be confronted with some very serious and important questions. For us, what is the role of NATO? Does our membership in NATO serve our national security interests? And if it does, then how much are we, the American people, willing to put on the line in our taxpayer dollars and in American lives? And how much are these NATO members willing to put on the line in their money and the lives of their citizens? We cannot allow ourselves, the United States of America and the American people, to continue to be in this position where these NATO members expect us to put up our money. They expect us to put up the lives of my brothers and sisters in uniform to protect them, when they're not even willing to do that for themselves.
Okay, so she actually was supporting Donald Trump's position there in reference to NATO. But again, when you look at what I showed you previously, did she ever really go that hard against Donald Trump? If you go back and look at it, when she was a part of the Democratic Party, she didn't vote in favor of the impeachment, right? She met with him in 2017 to talk to him about, foreign affairs, right? When she was still a Democrat. Was she ever really that hard against Donald Trump? And I ask that question because now Donald Trump is actually making some hints towards who he may look at for vice president. And Tulsi Gabbard is one of the ones that is on that list. Tulsi Gabbard is also fundraising, not necessarily for Trump's campaign per se, but she will be fundraising at Mar-a-Lago. So listen to this.
The audience has been asked who they think would be a good choice, and various names came up. One of them was, of course, Vivek Ramaswamy. He's made a big splash. Ron DeSantis, who's making an appearance today in South Carolina, we just found out. Obviously, Tim Scott, Byron Donalds, and a big presence here.
Hold up. Did you see the look on his face when she said that Ron DeSantis is making an appearance in South Carolina? Remember, DeSantis has already dropped out of the race. So watch his face.
Ron DeSantis, who's making an appearance today in South Carolina, we just found out.
He has this look on his face like that motherfucker. He's like, why? Damn you, Ron, you won't go away.
Obviously, Tim Scott, Byron Donalds, and a big presence here for Tulsi Gabbard. Very interesting. And Kristi Noem as well, I should say. Right. Are they all on your short list? And when can we expect that you will announce your choice?
The one thing that always surprises me is that the VP choice has absolutely no impact. It's whoever the president is. It just seems. I remember when Sarah Palin was actually picked, and she did have a big up, and then they just went after her at a level that nobody's seen. The Republicans themselves went after what they did.
But you'll be a one-term president because you've already served, so you can only serve for one term, although they say you'll never leave office. I assume that you'll never leave. There'll never be another election
don't
again.
Don't do it. He'll never leave. He's never going. Oh, these people.
So for that reason, it is important who you pick.
So I think it's very important. But look, first is that, as we said, it has to do with whoever is, it's a very important position for that reason. You would like to get somebody that could help you from the voter standpoint. And honestly, all of those people are good. They're all good. They're all solid. And I always say, I want people with common sense because there's so many things happening in this country that don't make sense. Who wants an open border? Who wants high interest rates? Who wants all electric vehicles? And they're fine, but you want to have choice. You want to go to combustion. You want to go to any hybrid. I think the hybrid are much better from that standpoint. But we were talking about faucets. We're talking about so much. It's all based on common sense. We want a strong military. We want choice in education. We want to have things that can really make our country great again. What we're doing with the open border is a disaster. We are destroying our country. We're going to change that fast, and we're going to get your energy prices down.
Mr. President, thank you so much for this.
Okay, so Tulsi Gabbard is one of the options he may consider. If you haven't had a chance to do so, go ahead and respond to that poll that's pinned to the live chat, because I'm curious to see what you think about who he's going to choose. And I say that because, let me flip here. This was announced recently. I want to make sure people understand what this really means, because some people saw this and they retweeted it and they thought that she was campaigning for him. That's not actually what's happening here. So The Hill actually reported this article Gabbard to headline fundraiser at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. So some people just read the headline and didn't read the article. So let me tell you exactly what she is going to be doing there. It says former Hawaii Representative Tulsi Gabbard is slated to appear at former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort next month. According to an invitation shared exclusively with The Hill, Gabbard is set to be the keynote speaker at the 917 Society's annual fundraiser on March 7th for a night in Palm Beach celebrating the Constitution. The event comes after Trump, the current former frontrunner for the Republican nomination, acknowledged Gabbard is under consideration to be his vice presidential choice among several other contenders. Dinner for the event costs $1,250, according to the invite. So I just wanted to be very clear about that because, again, I think some people just read the headline. This is actually a fundraiser for 917 Society, not for Donald Trump's campaign, so to speak. However, you can make the connection here and figure it out for yourself. It is also obviously very clear that Donald Trump would consider someone like Tulsi Gabbard. Eric, let me know when the poll's up and I can bring up the results as well. But I was curious to hear what you guys thought. I believe the choices that I put in the poll is Vivek, Tulsi, and I believe Tim Scott, who you think that he would pick. And I think the other choice was, I don't know. I think I always have that as a choice. But that being said, I feel like a lot of people who are saying, well, Tulsi completely changed. I don't think she completely changed. I had to go back and look at some of the older videos and hear her talking points again and seeing some of her actions and the way that she voted to realize maybe she didn't really change that much. Maybe this is always who she was, but because she was in the Democratic Party, maybe we didn't pay attention to some of her actions. Let's go ahead and bring up that poll. Thank you. All right. We have 865 or 66 votes. That number changes so many times. Who will Trump choose as vice president? 18% said Vivek. 22% said Tulsi. 12% said Tim Scott. And interesting, but 47% of you said you don't know. It's interesting. It's that close between Vivek and Tulsi. Very interesting. Ron DeSantis, by the way, thinks it's a mistake for him to consider these candidates. Ron DeSantis has made a statement recently saying that Donald Trump is trying to do identity politics. Boy, I tell you. But he thinks this is a mistake. In other words, Ron DeSantis thinks that Donald Trump should pick a white man. And the choices that he's mentioned have been Tulsi Gabbard, Vivek, and Tim Scott. So it's a mess. Either way, here we are. But boy, I tell you, Tulsi, I think she's just always been an opportunist.